Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about what happens when an INFJ sees no future. So, first of all, INFJs are known to be pretty future oriented. Just like all the intuitives, basically. They like thinking about what possibilities do I see and can I make those a reality? So, they are thinking about something like a goal that they want to reach. So, is it possible that an INFJ doesn't see a future? And I think, first of all, it's not very likely because that's not really what I mean with this. Because I think, yes, we can have moments where we don't really know what we want, but usually I think those moments don't last very long, and we usually decide on something that we want, or we just have multiple goals anyways, and there's always something, right? There's always some goal to focus on, and we will always see what's the next step that we need to take to reach it. But what I mean is, it can happen that we do see the future we want, right? But we don't see it happening. We don't see it working out. And that's what I mean with when INFJ sees no future. And most of the things I'm gonna say here might also apply to INTJs because I'm mostly just gonna talk about introverted intuition, which is our dominant function. I think that what happens when an INFJ doesn't see a future is that they become unhappy. They don't necessarily have to become depressed, but that's like the worst case scenario, right? Because I want to talk about introverted intuition. What does introverted intuition need, basically? What do INFJs want? And I think one thing that we basically need is we need to be working towards something all the time. We need to be working towards goals all the time. And what can happen is that this has happened to me sometimes, right? Where I have a goal and it's the same goal. And I know that it's something I really want to achieve, but I notice that for some reason I'm not getting closer to it. And the longer you're in that situation, and imagine it's a very, very important goal, the longer you see that you're not getting much closer to it at all over time, then there's a chance that an INFJ might start feeling like they're never gonna reach it or it's impossible or something, and they're not moving forward. And I think one thing we need is we need to feel like we are moving forward. I want to add a quote from the book Gifts Differing. We have the quote: "The intuitives are as stubbornly loyal to their guiding principle, the inspiring possibility, as the sensing types are to the facts, or the feeling types to their hierarchy of values, or the thinkers to their thought out conclusions." So here Myers basically summarized in a very short way kind of what every type cares about if you're just thinking about their dominant function, right? For intuitives, this is the inspiring possibility, and that's of course for everyone who is intuition dominant. I think progress is a very important word here, because when we're talking about introverted intuition or just intuition in general, it's a lot about ideals, and ideals technically cannot be reached, but you can get closer to it. And I think for an INFJ, what they want is just to get closer to it, as close as possible. It's about making progress. They see that over time they got closer to it. They made progress, and that's the main thing they care about. But yeah, what happens when it's like I know what I want, but I can't seem to get it? Of course, there can be several reasons for why this happens, right? It can be external circumstances. Like, for example, maybe you want something that's really difficult to get, or you're just not in a very lucky situation. You don't have the resources that you need. It could also be that you need more skill development, or you need more confidence, like you need to change something about yourself to be more successful at reaching your goals. So it can be several reasons for it. But yeah, so like imagine there's a ladder that you're trying to climb, and it goes like up into the sky, and you're climbing it, and it ends at the ideal, right? The ideal future or something. And the goal, for an INFJ is not to get to the end of the ladder, because technically it doesn't have an end, it just goes on forever. But the goal is to keep moving up the ladder and not to stand still on it, right? If we would be standing still on one of the things, the thing that you're standing on, and not moving, I think like that's the thing we don't want, Yeah, it's like we hate to feel like we are stuck. Like we see something, we see this possibility, and we're trying to go after it, and then nothing changes, and we keep just failing. Like, we keep trying different plans or different ways to get there, like different roads to get there, and everything we try just fails. And at that point, we just might start feeling really down, because that's the thing that motivates us. It's like we try to get there, and once we get closer, we see the progress, or we actually reach it, we feel happy. And it can be anything, it can be any goal. We'll probably have multiple goals at the same time, but we don't want to be stuck with something that's like really important to us, right? And yeah, like I said, it can be anything. It can be as simple as like, I want this certain job or something. It can also be something like, I want to change myself in some way. So, these ideals, it's like, for example, the perfect life or the perfect me are these ideals. Because we can imagine like, okay, this is the life I want, and this is what it is right now, and all this is wrong, but how am I gonna change it, right? We are great at like seeing potential of things. So we usually see our own potential. The problem is that we might see something, but it's too far away, right? It's something that's still, of course, it still doesn't exist yet, but at the same time, it might even be something that actually takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, and we don't always realize that, right? It could be that it's tempting to focus on it because it's like, okay, I see this possibility that seems like really something I want, but not fully understanding how much work it actually takes to get there. And we are introverts, which can be a problem, right? Because we're introverts. I already talked about this in another video, right? But that's why it can happen that we think too much, we're in our head too much, we don't take enough action, and then we don't put in enough work to reach the goals. And the problem is that we can be thinking like 10 steps ahead already. We might think at first like, yeah, I can do this, I can reach this in a few months or something, and then realize how much work it's actually gonna take, and realize that, okay, never mind, actually, this is gonna take me at least a year, right, to get there. And that's the reason why sometimes we can feel stuck, because we set goals for ourselves that are kind of too ambitious. So I've had this sometimes, where sometimes the problem was like, okay, I want something, and I'm underestimating how much work it takes, and I don't have the right skill to do it, and all that kind of stuff. So I need to go through all these steps of actually getting there. But the most important thing is that once we see progress, we're like, okay, it's gonna be okay, right? But if we don't, like if I didn't see any progress, I would start thinking like, okay, it's never gonna happen, right? And it's impossible, or I'm incapable, all that kind of stuff. And then you start feeling worse, and then you're not gonna solve the problem. So, because you don't have enough energy to do it. So you just get into this spiral of making things worse. Yeah, so the real problem for us happens only when we start thinking that something that we want is really impossible, and then like just not being able to have a goal can make us feel kind of bad, where we just feel lost, we don't really know what to do anymore. Because it's not like we can easily just kind of change our goals, because they're always connected to what we want. They're always personal. So it's still gonna connect it to what you want and who you are. So it's not like we can just easily let go of a certain goal, because we had it for a reason in the first place. We had it because it was something important to us. So yeah, sometimes there might be external circumstances that we really just can't do much, which really sucks when that's the case, because you can't do much about it. But the only thing we can really do is to improve our own skill to deal with things, so that we can realize our goals more easily. So imagine a more healthy INFJ will kind of be in a situation where they... Oh wait, I'm pointing to the wrong thing. This reality, right? And they have something in mind to change reality, some kind of possibility. And then that's NI. That's the goal, the ideal, whatever. That's technically, probably it's too perfect, right? Probably it's something that can't actually be reached. But what happens is they start kind of moving towards it. They start moving closer to it. They start changing reality to get closer to it. And they kind of live in this in-between reality where they don't accept reality. They are trying to change things all the time. They're trying to reach the goal. And they are there. But when we're talking about a more unhealthy INFJ, they're gonna be in the place of not managing to change reality, right? Which means that because they kind of lack the skill or the motivation to work towards their goals and to actually reach it, they are stuck with reality as it is now, and nothing is changing. They're seeing no progress. And they start thinking things like, oh, reality sucks. And they think that because the gap between their mind with introvert intuition and reality is too big, and it's not motivating. And then they start maybe becoming cynical, and then they might even start retreating into their mind, thinking that, well, I'd rather just be more introverted. And of course, then they also get into this spiral of just making things worse because they're not actually working on their skills. And I don't want to say that if someone is an unhealthy INFJ, that it's their fault or something. I think that sometimes we just need to work on ourselves, but sometimes the problem is that this world is, or society is sometimes not really built for us, not really built for INFJs and INTJs, because we're so mind focused. So it can be kind of difficult for us when we don't get the space to think about things. When we have to constantly focus on sensing, we are usually more people who like to think about things, kind of like the philosophers, right? Which is something that the world usually doesn't really appreciate. We use our minds to strategize what's the best thing we can do, what's the best way to do something to conserve our own energy, We usually don't do anything without a reason, right? The only way to kind of survive when we get pretty tired from using sensing is to make sure we always make the best decision. We always think about what are possible things I can do, what's something I absolutely should not do, and in the end, what's the best possibility, what's the best choice to make. And introvert intuition is really good at seeing those things. And of course, we can use our thinking to help it a little bit, right? Because I think intuition and thinking together can also be very useful. Like, for example, I can be in the same exact situation where when I'm in this situation and I don't like it and I see no way out of it whatsoever, I just feel really down. But when I see a way out of it, even if it's like it's gonna take several months or something, but if I see a way out of it and I see that I'm making progress, I just start feeling a lot better. And I think that's interesting. And I thought it's because it's just a thing that has to do with NI. We need to see that future, right? We need to see it as possible. And we need something to focus on, some kind of goal. That was all I want to say. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.